Hello again, everyone. Today's video is something different from what I normally touch on. I'm sure there's other channels who could much better break down and dig into things than myself, but I just wanted to share something I recently found that disturbed me greatly. Obviously, for legal purposes, none of what I'm talking about is something I can definitively say is true, so we're going to be going in with the assumption of hypotheticals and alleged things. I'm only sharing my own personal speculation based on information I came across. Decide for yourselves what you think, or feel free to look into things deeper yourself. Either way, I'll simply be sharing what I've discovered. That all being said, let's dive on in. During a search for some creepy Let's Not Meet stories, I ran across one called The Tooth Man by someone who called themselves Enormous Radio. It was highly ranked, sounded creepy as hell, and was very recent, so of course I decided to give it a read. What was included in the story was so horrifying and outlandish that I would have suspected the author of making things up or exaggerating for effect. Some of these things included the parents being banned from joining the children, the dentist shaking and beating the children for crying, doing painful procedures with little to no pain medication, and even leaving children strapped into chairs for an hour or more with painful devices on their heads while he ate his lunch. Obviously, this sounds like the makings for a demented horror film, so you'll forgive me for my initial doubts. I mean, for the love of God, this man unironically called himself the Tooth Man. Sounds like a downright creepypasta. However, what next caught my eye was a link that the author included, an active link to a Yelp review page. I decided to follow this link and check it out. On this page, there are over 15 one-star reviews spanning over the course of a decade from various people breaking down their own terrifying experiences, many of which were hauntingly similar to what Enormous Radio described in their story. I'll go through a few of them here with you. Again, none of these are my own statements. I'm simply reading word for word the statements of others. I can't prove any of these are true, but what's written is absolutely chilling. I'm not sure if it's necessary since it's all publicly posted, but I will censor out the personal information in my own video. Dr. Dan, as I remember him, was a nightmare as a child. He terrorized me and my brother in Winchester Center while growing up. We have memories of him spanking us, accosting us, and popping out 9 teeth at a time with his thumbs. I recommend you steer far, far away from this man. You've been warned. I took my daughter to see Dr. Arthur Daniels for her very first dentist visit at age 2. I had expected to be in the exam room with her throughout the entire appointment, but Dr. Daniels and his staff absolutely refused to allow me back with my child. They made me feel like I was utterly foolish for insisting that I stay with her, claiming she needed to see the dentist by herself. I was bullied into second-guessing my own judgment and made to feel as if I was some neurotic, crazy, overprotective mother. My daughter was literally choking back tears as the assistant took her by the arm and led her to the exam room. I knew I would never set foot into that office again, and I waited anxiously pacing in that empty waiting room. It wasn't until years later that my daughter told me what really happened in that exam room. She told me as she sat there crying, asking for her mommy. Dr. Arthur Daniels put his gloved hand over her nose and mouth and very angrily said to her, "Shut up," through his gritted teeth, all while the female assistant stood by and watched the entire event unfold and did nothing. I went here from when I was 5 until I was 15 and am scarred for life. Every review below is spot on. I cried every time I was in his office. I remember once when I was getting fitted for my retainers, I told him that I could not breathe with the molds in my mouth. He then proceeded to use his hands to manually keep my mouth closed in order for the mold to imprint. I screamed and cried as I couldn't breathe as he told me to shut up and breathe through your nose. I was 12. This man is Satan. I could write a novel about the torture I endured as a child patient of his, but I won't make myself relive that trauma. Describing him as Satan sums it up. Do not bring your children to see him. He is a psychopath. Holy blank. I can't believe this guy is still allowed to practice dentistry, let alone on children. I went here as a kid for a few years. A family member of mine was briefly a hygienist at his Winchester office, and it was convenient for me to go there. Every one of these 1-star reviews is on the nose. No parental involvement whatsoever, aside from payment, of course. Luckily, my family member would occasionally come by if she was working to mirror my grimaces and comfort me wordlessly as he tortured my sore, bloody mouth. He is an absolute sadist and has no business being around children with his caustic personality and complete disregard for the comfort of his little patients. On a positive note, the extensive amount of work I had done by him taught me how to meditatively deal with pain management. I would sit and stare at the brick patterns of nearby buildings to distract myself from the searing pain. One time he pulled out 5 of my molars. Because they were going to fall out anyway, might as well do it now. I had no bottom molars to chew with and had to have all my food microwaved into mush in hopes of softening it. Work was done on baby teeth anyway, though. Have to give him credit for relentlessly fleecing that insurance money. He is the reason why I am terrified of going to the dentist as an adult. There are plenty of dentists around that are great with kids. Don't give this guy any of your money or the souls of your young children. And to the Tooth Man, as he was called 30 years ago, and probably still is because he's insane enough to come up with his own sort of ominous in retrospect nickname. If you're reading this, I have no problem slapping around an old man. I'll leave a link in the description for those who would like to read through the rest themselves. The more of these reviews I read through, the more frightened I became over the likelihood of this not just being one Redditor's scary exaggeration. How could this many people have so similar experiences over the course of a decade? Personally, I don't know, but I don't like it at all. Anyways, jumping back to my brief search. It was shocking enough to have an actual name and real practice linked to Enormous Radio's story, but yet another chilling detail was soon revealed. In their story, they had described the dental practice as having been in a huge old yellow mansion. Pretty strange for a dental practice, awfully unique, and pretty hard to forget about. Something like this was sure to come up if the story had any merit to it, even hypothetically. Well, this further spurred me to do a little more digging. On the same Yelp page, there was a listed address. I decided to take that address and do a little Google search. Upon doing so, I was disturbed to find this. From the view of the iconic Google Maps camera, you can clearly see a large yellow mansion where this real dental practice was said to be located on its listed Yelp page. I should also mention that I'm using located in past tense because also according to the Yelp page, this practice is now permanently closed. If the terrifying accounts are to be believed, that's definitely for the best. Now, again, I don't personally know all the facts here, so I can't legally make any definitive statements. But my own personal message is this. If you believe you have personally experienced trauma at the hands of the so-called Tooth Man, you have a very real case to make to the authorities. And from the looks of it, there are plenty of other people right alongside you. So I would personally urge you and the other alleged victims to band together and file a case. I am not personally sure what your state's statute of limitations are, but it would be worth looking into. Yeah, the guy is probably long since retired, but honestly, if he really did do this stuff, even if it comes late, it's better than never at all. But again, that's my personal opinion operating under the assumption that these first-hand accounts are indeed true. Whatever the case, this is terrifying and no small child, let alone any person at all, should ever have to go through such a thing. I know I haven't got all the answers, but I just figured I should probably speak up. Again, this channel isn't big into investigation. It's not my thing. So I'm sure the rabbit hole in this situation could go much, much deeper, and there are other people who could handle this topic much better. And I actually invite them to. I welcome anyone who is interested to take a look for themselves and see what they can find. I simply wanted to share the disturbing things I discovered, in case there was a chance they really were true. What do you guys think? Anyway, this topic is a little too heavy for me, so this is where I'll sign off. I'll see you all again next time, and until then, remember, stay creepy.